Hyper Light Breaker. Now this is coming from Heart Machine, the devs who have made Hyper Light Drifter, which is a cult favorite and an indie darling. It started from a Kickstarter campaign where people love everything about this game, and they've also made Solar Ash, which has some beautiful aesthetics and is also a beloved game. So when Heart Machine announced Hyper Light Breaker, fans were hyped. It was set in the same world as the first game, which was already very interesting, and this had co-op and multiplayer, and it just looked great. But unfortunately, the game came out and it had some serious performance issues, not enough content, and reviews for this game tanked hard. I didn't play this game when it came out. I did play it during Gamescom before it released and was super excited for it. So when Heart Machine reached out and asked if I wanted to play the Double Down August update early, I of course wanted to see whether this game was worth diving into. So I started playing this game with fresh eyes, disregarding all of the other reviews, and really want to answer the question of whether this game is worth your time and worth it to play now, whether you played on launch or if you're just jumping in for the first time like me. So what exactly is this game? This is a multiplayer open world roguelike with some extraction style elements. You can play this with up to a crew of 3, and it's set in the world of light, where you venture into the Overgrowth, a world filled with disarray, mysterious and vicious enemies in this third-person combat style with a very punchy and colorful art style that looks beautiful. Heart Machine took the graphics and theme of Hyper Light Drifter and made it 3D, which looks phenomenal. Now the Overgrowth is procedurally generated, which means each time you start a run, the map will be different and there are different biomes. You play as a breaker, warriors tasked with bringing about peace and security, who each have their own stats, weapon types they can equip, and looks, and you can unlock all of them by playing the game. You start off in a cave where you get starter weapons, and similar to a roguelike, you go out to the world looking for more gear and loot, but the ultimate objective is to take down the Abyss King. To get to him though, you have to find prisms through the map, namely 6 prisms which open up the gates to the crowns, which are major boss fights. There are 3 crowns on the map, and you have to take all of them down, where you then have to extract, fight a final wave of enemies, and then fight the Abyss King himself. Now since it's early access, the Abyss King isn't here yet, but being a roguelike, when you die you lose your entire gear that you collected, but you keep all of the upgrade materials that you picked up. That's the foundation of this game. Now let's dig into what actually works in this game. Starting it off with the good, and one of the highlights of this game is the meaningful progression that it offers. Being a roguelike, progression is definitely a key factor of this game, where you want each run to feel rewarding, and this game does exactly that. And I want to talk about progression in 2 aspects: within each run and after the run. Starting off the run, you start off with very basic gear that's level 0. Then you'll hunt for better gear, where the minimap is actually super useful because it will show you major points of interest when you get close, so you can head towards gear or towards the main objectives, which is to get prisms and go after the bosses. During the run, you'll see a bunch of collectibles scattered around the map, like food items, gear, and various currency. The most important currency during the run is Bright Blood, which you can use for things like leveling up your character, spending to refill your medkits at various shrine locations, or using to purchase things from vendors. You get Bright Blood from killing enemies or by collecting various loot from around the world. This currency is only good during the run, but not after the run. Now there are other currencies that you can find which are more rare, like golden rations and cores, where golden rations get you permanent upgrades to your character's EXE upgrade tree. Each upgrade takes up EXE slots, which you can expand over time. The upgrade tree is quite expansive, where you start off with a certain number of EXE slots, and you can use golden rations to unlock new upgrades which apply to all of your breakers, and it includes things like getting an additional medkit, which is the first thing you should absolutely do, increasing damage to your dash strike, getting HP upon discovering shrines, and even finding rarer gear. In the current state of early access, you can actually unlock all of the levels, and you have enough slots to equip the entire skill tree at once, aside from maybe 1 or 2, making it a huge upgrade, a literal night and day difference. You can also use golden rations to unlock vendors and level them up in the hub, and it's also used for unlocking more breakers that you can experiment with. The other currency you can pick up is cores, which will help you upgrade your character's max stats and change their unique perks. And the last currency is Abyss Stones, which you can use to get some higher tiered upgrades for your character, such as growing from level 1 EXE slots to level 2. So during the run, you're trying to get the best gear so you can take on the bosses, level up your character by spending Bright Blood and collecting all of the food that you can. But when you die in a run, you drop all of the gear that you picked up, which means your weapons and armor, but you keep all of the materials that you can use for permanent upgrades. Based on how far you get in the world, you also get guaranteed golden rations, which is great, so each run feels meaningful even when you die. But even within the actual run, the level upgrades and gear upgrades are substantial, and more damage output to increase your survivability and chances of success. There's a big difference from when when you start the run at level 0 to your maxed out level 8, because each level increase gives you a hollow bite, which is a perk that you can select which are randomized, and you can pick one at each level, and the increase in stats like HP and damage are super noticeable. Similarly, outside of the run and in the game itself, playing the game more, your character with all of the EXE skills unlocked is light years better than the base character, making progression a key part of the game and something that's executed really well. Now let's move on to the combat and combat variety. That's also a highlight of the game. You have both melee and ranged combat, grenades, special abilities, all tied together with dodges, parries, and even dash attacks. Your ranged weapon is called a rail, and you almost always have a sword type weapon, and all of these weapons have their own weapon types and different rarities. Combat feels fluid and satisfying, but it also feels somewhat like a Souls-like in a sense, because you have these moves with locked animations, so if you time it wrong, you'll be left totally vulnerable, which if you play difficult action games, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. What's interesting are the synergies in the combat, because your melee is your primary weapon, and doing hits recharges your grenade abilities and gets you more batteries, which fires your ranged weapon. So it all synergizes in that way. Each of these weapons have their own elemental affixes like fire, shock, crystal, hack, and rot. So you can synergize your build and get creative in that way, and your weapon always has a special tied to its weapon type. There's also different rarity of gear, with more rare gear giving you better affixes and more stats. And there's also weapon levels for each of these three, so you can start to see how all of these things build upon each other. Somewhat related to combat variety, you play all of this using breakers, and the breaker variety is also quite good. Each breaker has their own set of base stats, some being more tanky while others being more nimble, and the key part is that they can only equip certain types of weapons, adding to the variety of the combat. The base stats that change per breaker are actually quite drastically different, where of course some have less HP or more stamina, but even the quality of drops in the overgrowth, crit chance, crit damage, and even the number of dashes all change depending on the breaker you're using. Top of that, each breaker has their own unique abilities which you can change during your starting run, so you can change their Psycom perks which are persistent, and you can unlock more from your progression of the game by using golden rations, and you can unlock more breakers using golden rations as well. The new breaker that they added feels like an advanced character since they only have one dash, and dashes are absolutely critical in this game, while most breakers have two. Speaking about dashes, let's talk about the difficulty. They've actually scaled back the difficulty in this game in the most recent update. So previously you didn't start off with a med kit. They now added that. Then there are plants in the overgrowth that heal you for 10 each, and at each shrine you can add a permanent EXE upgrade that gives you up to 30 HP for each new shrine that you find. That's not all though. You can refill your medkits at each shrine for bright blood, and you can use each shrine in the overgrowth once to extract out back to the hub. Going back to the hub refills your health and your medkits and gives you the chance to either make more food buffs for you or upgrade the gear that you're wearing or re-roll the affixes. So they've definitely made the game easier, but despite all of that, I would still classify this game as still a difficult game, and that's because of the enemies and the combat. The combat is unforgiving, where if you make a wrong move, you're left vulnerable and the enemies continually get stronger in the world. The waves of enemies, especially if they're attacking together, makes a deadly combo. So this game is definitely tough, but that's a good thing. It's a roguelike, it's not meant to be easy, and with the progression both inside the runs and outside of the runs, it scales well, where you constantly have to be on the defensive. For veterans and when you get stronger, they did add a glitch system that increases the difficulty, making the world even more tough, making it great for newcomers and people looking for a challenge with a higher reward. Now we can also talk about the movement in this game. You have a hoverboard which really helps with traversing the zones and biomes, and you have a glider so you can jump from high mountains to get to the next region. There's a Breath of the Wild style stamina bar with both the hoverboard and the glider. The movement in this game is fluid and dynamic. The dodges, hoverboard, and glider all make traversal really satisfying and stylish, which leads to the beautiful art style in this game. This art style and world look breathtaking. Vibrant colors, glitch style dodges, everything about this game looks amazing and well designed, and I really like the theme that they have. Any screenshot that you take makes it look like some beautiful concept art. Another cool thing about this game is the enemies and the bosses. The bosses are really cool looking, and the enemies too. They have these mini bosses that show up as the world level increases, such as the assassin and the sword master, and overall there's a good amount of enemy variety. Enemies vary by biome, some being more annoying than others, with the most annoying enemy being one that becomes invincible for some time. The enemies do seem well designed, and I do think the bosses could get a little harder with additional attack patterns and styles, and usually the bosses have two different stages, but adding in another attack pattern could help make the fights less choreographed. The best part about the game is that it's multiplayer, so playing with a crew of of 3 makes it very fun, and also the game feels like it's built for multiplayer. The enemies in world become much easier to take on with the crew splitting aggro, and the game has matchmaking to join public lobbies too if you don't have any friends like me. Now that we talked about the good aspects of the game, let's get into the mixed section of the game. And the first one I want to talk about is the exploration of the game. Now the reason this is mixed is because the game incentivizes you to explore and fight everything. You'll want to get the best loot, get the most bright blood by defeating enemies so you can get stronger, but the difficulty in this game scales based on world level, and the world level increases by actions such as finding loot and killing enemies. So in theory, this sounds pretty cool because the enemies are growing stronger the same way you're growing stronger, but this actually makes me want to do a playstyle that I don't think is intended, which is basically that I want to avoid all fights except the ones that are mandatory, and just steal the loot so that the world level increases as little as possible. You definitely are forced to fight because some prisms are only unlocked by killing the elite enemy, but for all of the loot scattered around, I would just try hoverboarding in, quickly stealing the loot, and leaving without touching the enemies. There isn't a time pressure though, because the world level only increases from looting and killing. I know that this system is intentional, but having that playstyle shouldn't be rewarding. I still feel like they can implement this risk and reward situation because the enemies leveling with you is a good idea, but I'm not sure how they can improve that aspect. Now let's talk about the parry. The parry is great. They actually just upgraded the parry so that it's omnidirectional, which means enemies attacking you from any direction, you can parry with a well-timed parry, and trust me, a lot of enemies are going to attack you from every direction. But because the combat is brutal, the parry leaves you vulnerable right after, and I feel like the duration of the vulnerability is slightly too long. Yes, the parry should leave you vulnerable so that you don't spam it, but when bosses do multiple hit attacks, you can't parry each attack. You basically have to dodge some attacks and then become reliant on the dodge. So making the parry a bit tighter where I can block multiple hit attacks would be great. Of course, for adds and swarms of enemies, you won't be able to parry each of them because they'll all be attacking at different times. So you'll parry one attack and get hit by all of the other ones if you don't dodge. The parry is a super useful mechanic, and a perfect parry makes it so that you regain some of your lost health, which is a great mechanic and really adds to the combat depth. Now let's talk about the amount of content there is. I actually feel like for an early access game, there is a ton of playtime in this game because there's just so much to unlock, and getting to that level does take a significant amount of time. I know previously people were complaining about a lack of content, but now it feels like there is a good amount of content. It will take some grinding to unlock everything though. There are 4 bosses now, 1 added with the new update that rotate during the runs with a variety of enemies and mini bosses so that it doesn't feel too repetitive apart from the world generation, and you'll want to go in to unlock more loot. With more updates in the future, I'm sure it will increase, and when the game adds in the Abyss King, it'll probably be the perfect amount of content. Finally, let's talk about the negative aspects of the game, and starting it off is the world variation. Since each run is procedurally generated, and with roguelikes, it's a big thing to have varied runs because you can try different things. But overall, all of my runs, the world looked similar. Yes, things did move around and there weren't any weird procedurally generated things, but there wasn't a lot of variety within the worlds. One thing that they could add is different biomes, because usually you get to see almost all of the biomes, so having a set of biomes that rotates out could be good, or just more randomness introduced into the game. Or they can have some vendors or special events that spawn during some runs to make each run stand out a bit more. The bosses do rotate, but something to make the runs more unique and varied. Next is the lack of single player balance. I played this game alone since I have no friends, and honestly it becomes much more difficult than intended. Without other people around, all of the enemies focus on you only, and it becomes hard to dodge and parry everything, especially with a very high world level. For me, the outside enemies were way harder than the boss battles at high world levels, because there are just a ton of enemies, especially when you're extracting after beating all of the bosses. I literally had max health and all of my medkits, and was getting wrecked only because I was playing single player when I was extracting after beating all of the bosses. This game becomes a lot more fun in multiplayer, but for people playing it solo, the developers could add in some AI robot companion or something that helps break up the enemy aggro and make the game more enjoyable. Now that's not a big complaint since the game does make it easy to join public lobbies, but since I was playtesting the update early, the servers were down and I can only imagine the fun this game would be in multiplayer. Finally, and this could be a nitpick here, I do wish there were more animated story segments in the game. The game's lore and story is able to be unlocked through collecting corrupted fragments during your runs, which helps you unlock tidbits around each of the bosses and the world, but they are screenshots, which you have to piece together. It's interesting and I somewhat like it, and I haven't collected all of the story story pieces, but it would be really cool to have an animated story fragment after you collect everything about the bosses to see how the world became the way it is. I know others might get annoyed about just screenshots as opposed to animated sequences like Hyperlight Drifter. Overall, did the Double Down update make Hyperlight Breaker worth playing? Yes, I had a ton of fun playing this game. The Double Down update was great, and even though I'm coming in here with fresh eyes and playing this game for the first time, longtime fans will be happy with the stuff that they changed in this update, because the developers are truly listening and want to make this the greatest game. The game looks beautiful, plays well, the updates around difficulty and adding in HP and adding in a new boss with new enemies and a breaker all make the game something that you can jump into again, and there were no performance issues that I encountered. I rate games on a scale of play, backlog, and not worth it, and especially for an early access title, this is a play game. Playing this with friends, taking on tough bosses in this picturesque world, and leveling up your character, trying out the new breakers is all really fun. The new glitch system makes things even more tough and great for people coming back. And really, even in early access, the best part about this game is that the developers are listening and really trying to make it the best game they can by listening to the players' feedback. The game is night and day with major gameplay changes and overhauling the entire structure of the game from when I read its reviews when it first launched, and that's great to see. I'm excited for more future updates, and if you like games like these, you may want to check out games like Deep Rock Galactic, the upcoming Godbreakers, or even Souls-like games because of the combat. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video, and leaving a comment does help a ton, and it lets me know if I should even make YouTube videos in the first place. Let me know what you think of the game, and if this was a fair review, or if I missed anything down below, and let me know if you're jumping back in or waiting for the full release.